Signs of the Southland, Monday, July 26, 2021. Mr. Grant, is it just me, or have all of the Olympic swimming races so far been god tier competition this year?
Well, I don't know if this is a perk or a minus, but the US, not quite its dominant past self.
It's
Would you
like
say?
the Aussies actually got their stuff together for once.
Well, it's that. It's the team was really old in 2016, so a lot of these faces are new, which is a separate but also interesting conversation. And I had the depressing thought last night that we may never have the transcendent swimming moment again, quite like we did in 2008. But in
Hey,
terms
to
of
be
the
fair, no, to be fair, I agree on the point about the '08 because you're referring to the 4x100 free relay for the men in '08. I know you're referring to that, but the 4x100 relay this year was still pretty high drama. Obviously, not as high.
I mean that's the greatest race of all time. But I meant the every time Michael Phelps stepped in the pool chasing 8 golds, it was most TV sets in America, or at least most sports-minded ones, tuned into Beijing,
Well,
right?
it's also that. So I think the 13-hour time delay or time difference is also playing into it, right? Like right now, we were talking about this before we started recording. Like I could stay up right now. We're recording this about 9 p.m. Eastern. I could stay up right now for USA women's water polo. I think that the women's 5v5 basketball is on at around like 10 or midnight. Following the 5v5 is the 3v3. That's at like 3, like midnight 40. And then at 4 a.m. Eastern is the women's soccer, is the U.S. women's national team soccer final group stage game. And then at 7 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning, God, Slack sucks. At 7 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning is the softball gold medal game, U.S. versus Japan. Like
That's snuck up on me too, I gotta say.
the
But
problem with this, and I was talking about this in Discord with some other people, is that one, the time difference sucks. Number two, it's that all of these events are live and you realize that they're live and there are places to watch them. So you will rather watch them live in a decentralized format rather than everyone tuning their TVs into NBC at 8 p.m. for primetime coverage like they did in Beijing, which is different. It's a different way of watching. It kind of makes me think at a certain level that the internet has made watching the Olympics suck
yeah,
because not everyone is tuned into the same race at the same time. Because and also the primetime coverage for NBC also kind of sucks because they show stuff on tape delay that doesn't actually matter. Like
yeah,
we had gymnastics prelims going on instead of watching the live skateboard final for a lot of last night's coverage, right? Like parts of it's pros and cons, but I think the general thesis here is that the internet has made watching the Olympics really suck.
yeah. And I don't know, like the fact that it's in the middle of the night, people go, well, I could have gotten it live. Why even watch now that I can see the final score? It I'm not going to opine and be all back in my day or something like that. But you're right. You're right. And here's where I will take my resident. We didn't write these down on the shot sheet, so Akshay has taken the internet has ruined the game,
Live.
and I'm about to go with the. I think it's shocking that baseball and softball are like these one-off trial sports when they keep adding things like surfing, rock climbing. They're adding taekwondo or not taekwondo, like cheerleading or something for 2024, and
So
it's
I
like
get it. Well, the thing is, I get it, right?
no. I will die on this hill.
You'll die on it for sure, is
In
what
the
you.
entire Western Hemisphere play these sports. You do not see many sports that are, frankly, quite as transcendent as baseball, and it is a not even Eurocentric, but it's a Eurocentric mindset of the IOC to say, hey, this sport isn't relevant when most of Asia and all of the Western Hemisphere, plus Australia, plus odds and ends here. Your Holland, Italy, whatever.
There's a whole other discussion about a WBSC eligibility rules that I would love to get into at some point, but that is not topic du jour. Also, the baseball bit that you're doing here is a great segue into our preview topic today. We are previewing GT baseball today, but I need to get my kicks in because I do understand the IOC's stance with this. The IOC usually doesn't make sense, but in this case, they do. You have to build entirely new facilities, or at least have existing facilities for baseball and softball. It is an added cost in countries that don't have existing baseball and softball culture.
Well, and where is it next time? LA.
Yeah, I mean, put it in the countries that have the culture, but don't go to London and don't go to Rio and retrofit a soccer pitch for baseball. It did not work that well in London.
Well, but they could still do it.
Doing it is one thing. Doing it well is another thing. Also, the softball competition in Tokyo, to be fair, is not being done particularly professionally. You have to admit that.
No, I would agree. Yeah, just like on the retrofitted baseball diamond.
It's so dumb.
But I will say, if you're going to say something like that, where are you going to go surfing in Paris in 2028?
Technically, they're going to Tahiti. I learned that today.
They're going to Tahiti. Okay. Well, then do Olympic baseball in, Boston when you're having a Dublin games. I don't know.
I get your point. I'm not saying I don't get your point. I'm just saying that this one has there's a direct linkage to the logic here because of the cost of building facilities, and the cost of building facilities is already so high for these Olympics. You have to build new ones for half of these sports.
Well, you know what this all just begs? The question this all begs, right?
No, I don't know where you're going with this.
Just host the Olympics in the same place. So that way we can have more sports and nobody loses a hell of a lot of money.
Yes, but where is the grift, Jake? Where is the classic grift that we've all come to know, love, and hate from the IOC if you just put it in the same place every 4 years?
Are we really going to take the left turn into the 1904 Olympics were stolen from Chicago? Because we can do that too.
We're already 10 minutes into this, and we haven't even talked about our actual topic, and we have 2 of them to get to today.
Oh, it might be a 2-hour episode, people.
We're doing another one of those again. I got a lot of good feedback from the last time we did one of those. That was a fun time.
We actually did get good feedback from that, but we're not here to toot our own horn. If you guys would like to give us feedback, though, from the rumbleseat@gmail.com, FTRS blog on Twitter, Jake Grant 98, and whatever the heck Akshay.
Compliance@godtech.edu.
Oh, or you you could send them to your app store reviews.
Please don't.
Not for the podcast, for the game.
I haven't read those in a long time, and I'd rather not. Moving right along, like I said, we are going to talk about Georgia Tech baseball today. Also, a special topic later in the broadcast, but we will get there. Mr. Grant, every podcast is someone's first. Every podcast is someone's first. For the Eurocentric among us, please describe the sport of baseball. And also, do not take long, because I know you'll try to get philosophical about it.
I was about to say, well, it all began on a field in New Jersey in 18 whatever. No, baseball. We talked softball last week. Fundamentally, the 2 sports are very similar. Don't throw tomatoes at me, softball and baseball people. They're very similar. You have a stick, you hit a ball. The pitching delivery is very different. The size of the baseball.
The arm mechanics.
Is smaller. Baseball played on fields, 90-foot bases, usually dirt around the base paths, but not through the middle like softball. Pitchers pitch from a raised mound. That is currently a little bit of controversy.
Not TLDR. Come on, TLDR.
Into that. Field dimensions, ranging from 320 in the corners at the minimum to 420 plus in center field. That's a big range, but basically batter hits ball and advances around the bases if it is struck is that the every podcast is someone's first?
Yeah, I think that'll do. I think
Okay.
that'll do.
Right.
One thing I'll note, because I do think it's kind of interesting, is that there is, if I remember correctly, there is a U.S. national women's baseball team.
Yeah.
They don't play games often, but there is a pretty sizable contingent of female baseball players, and not just shunted over into softball, but like playing baseball.
You seen the movie A League of Their Own?
Okay, well, I'm not referring to that. I'm referring to modern day.
Well, yeah, but I'm still saying like that was a baseball league. That wasn't a softball league.
Yeah, but extenuating circumstances, though, in that case. But still, the point. I mean, I think both of our points stand here.
Yeah, for sure. One thing to note about baseball versus softball. Traditionally, baseball does have very irregular fields. Softball being, I guess, a little bit newer, but also just a little bit, I guess,
less staunchly traditional.
Yes, softball has more, quarter pie slice looking fields. Baseball, you get a lot of not orthogonal lines, straight lines, weird angles in the outfield, and also foul territory. So
yeah, it doesn't really come into play. I would say it doesn't really come into play that often at the college level. I think college ones, it depends where you are, really. Like Durham Bulls Athletic Park, where Duke usually plays, like they have the Blue Monster. That kind of affects how they roll. But that's more of like a stylistic decision than really anything that is determined by geography. Like, I mean, for Fenway Park, like that thing is a bandbox because of the streets that it was built, the corner that it was built on, right? The Polo Grounds too were the same way. So, and the Polo Grounds don't exist anymore, but I digress. But that again, like the field dimensions being weird are mostly a pro baseball thing.
Yes. I will say at Tech, because that is the next thing on our list, they play at Russ Chandler Stadium, colloquially. Well, it's McNeese Baseball Park at Russ Chandler Stadium.
I forget that they redid the name, but I don't want to use the new name, even though someone very generous paid for it.
I was going to say the colloquialism, the Rusty C, Russ Chandler, believe, based on our resident baseball historians that sometimes are at the park, that it comes from the rusted nature of the bleachers pre-2003 renovation. Georgia Tech has played baseball on that site really since they purchased Rose Bowl Field after winning the Rose Bowl in 1928. That, along with the now constructed Brock indoor for football, immediately down the left field line.
I think Griffin Crack was also on that lot, technically.
Yeah, but it's what forces Russ Chandler's interesting field dynamics. You have to wedge it into basically 3 streets, 2 football fields, and I guess the groundskeeping space out in center field. Before that, actually, Bobby Dodd, what is now Bobby Dodd Stadium, Grant Field, was a multi-use track, football, and baseball facility. So, yes, longtime home of Tech on the corner of, what is that, Fowler and First, Fowler and Fifth? I don't even know what you call that.
Crud. Fowler and
like, where does Fifth become First? That's my question.
I'm gonna Google it. Hold on. Chandler Stadium.
This is a question I wonder a lot.
On First Drive, and it's got to be First and Fowler.
Okay.
Technically, well, the First and Fowler would be the right field corner.
Yeah. I mean, that's the corner that I most associate with the stadium.
I mean, there's no other corner on a street.
Exactly. In terms of the stadium in general, it was actually just renovated this past year. It was not open until very late in the season for single game tickets for non-season ticket holders. That's a whole we don't need to get into. So many of you, we realize, probably have not seen it yet. That includes you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I haven't been over there yet. Well, I think I've seen it with mine eyes, but not inside.
Yeah. Having been in there, I was lucky enough to be a student last spring, so I caught a couple games. The renovations are very nice. I have not seen the pitching tunnels or anything like that downstairs, but the event space, the new concession stand, and the second level sky deck with the view of the skyline are quite excellent. And I think it makes what is probably, if not the best, one of the best stadiums in college baseball even better. So yeah, Georgia Tech definitely has a wonderful place to play if you have not been.
Okay, so just a couple more notes from Wikipedia because Wikipedia is a fantastic resource for random history. Like we said, it was constructed on Rose Bowl Field. They put in because Fifth Street had to be extended. They tore down a permanent grandstand in 1971, the original permanent grandstand, and rebuilt it. They added lights in 1983. The stadium only had that bleacher seating for another 2 years after that. Those lights were installed, and then it was rebuilt for the centennial year in '85 with mostly aluminum. That's how it got the Rusty C name. And then it was torn down and entirely rebuilt in '02 with the now more notable brick and less aluminum. And then, like we said, there was a phase 1 renovation, I think in 11 or 12, that I forget which part of the stadium that hit, but I think that was more the locker room and the underground parts of the clubhouse. And then when they did phase 2 this past year, they added the more consumer oriented stuff. And then a couple more of the analytics-y, MLB player locker rooms and Champions Hall and all that stuff with this renovation.
They definitely lost some seating capacity, but I think
absolutely
for more premium, more space for pitching and development, and also fire codes must have changed or something like that because there's now a much more sizable gap between the end of the stadium and the Brock. I believe it's probably about double that. I don't have a good, I didn't go out there with a tape measure or anything, but where the old batting tunnel used to end towards the Brock.
That old big hill where that was right in left field is now gone. That's all now the new bullpen and training area.
Yep.
So if you remember, if you've seen the stadium on TV, or if you remember going to it in the last couple of years, down the foul line, right at the tip of the foul line, used to be a massive knoll. That is all now gone, replaced with an actual bullpen, an actual 2-lane bullpen.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a lot of nerdy stadium talk. Let's move on. Tell me about the championship structure for those that don't know.
Honestly, pretty similar to softball again.
Except literally the exact same.
Yes. I will say the ACC tournament structure is much different. Some people love it. Some people hate it. 4 pools, 3 teams. Basically, it's a round robin in the pools. The tiebreaker, if teams go 1-1, is the top seed advances.
It's the dumbest tiebreaker ever. It is the dumbest tiebreaker ever, and it has bailed us out at least once, I think.
Including this year, right? Yeah, including this. It's pretty dumb. But top 4 teams, 1 from each pool. Basically, if you're not the top seed, you have to go 2-0 is the gist you get there. But then they play a mini 4-team bracket. It basically ensures every team gets 2 games instead of teams only being assured 1 game. So, coin flip on that. Top 4 teams play a little bracket. In terms of the NCAA tournament, 64-team bracket. Regional is 4 teams, double elimination. Then a super regional, it's a 3-game series, best 2 out of 3. Then that repeats again in Omaha for the College World Series. And then the championship regionals are at the sites of 16 selected teams. Tech last hosted in 2019. They went to Vandy in 2021. And the super regional is at the site of the higher
national seed
of the 2 seeds that remain. If both are national seeds, so yeah, that'd go to the 3. If it was the 3 in what would 3 play? The
3 would play the 14.
Yeah,
the 14 advanced.
Interestingly, this year we had two non-national seeds make a super regional, but because it was COVID, it was at South Carolina, wasn't it?
Yeah, so the super regional sites had to be pre-selected out of a group of 20. But the regional and super regional sites were pre-selected out of a group of 20. So you had a weird situation where South Carolina was hosting a regional, and I think it hosted a super regional, but they lost in the regional. Like they were not the one seed in that regional. I think it was ECU
Virginia.
was the. I thought it was ECU.
Or maybe they played it. Maybe Virginia then played the super regional. I can't remember.
Yeah. Virginia beat Dallas Baptist to advance out on a walk-off to advance out of the regional. But it was all hosted by South Carolina, but they were the 2 seed in that regional. So I think 2020 or 2021, they're going to be outlier years for the format. We're probably going to return to a normal national seeds, host regionals and super regionals format next year. I don't really, barring extenuating circumstances, I do not see the pre-selection happening again.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that was pretty universally panned, especially because, teams like Virginia, who came out on a real hot streak to end the year, Georgia Tech, who won the Coastal, obviously, were basically out of it, halfway through the year from hosting, basically couldn't be a top 16 team. Speaking of regionals, are we going to unpack this? Because do
we want to? Because there's a lot of stuff. Okay, so let's Tech's recent history in postseason play. 2021. We'll go back reverse chronologically. 2021, very weird season, cap ended by almost beating Vanderbilt twice.
Yes. And this is, I have this later on in my notes, but this is a Georgia Tech team, and we're talking about recent history, so we can talk about it. 2019, basically top to bottom, pretty stacked, not a lot of pitching.
Possibly one of the best Georgia Tech teams to set, one of the most complete teams, at least, that we've seen.
But to contrast that, 2021 was, I think, probably fairly seen as a somewhat fundamentally flawed baseball team. Yes?
Oh yeah, very, very flawed.
They're hitting pretty good, but bats could go quiet. They won a lot of games with some late heroics, including memorable walk-offs.
Not sustainable.
Yay! Against Clemson, won against Louisville in the ACC tournament, and tying it back into the regional, nearly beating Vanderbilt not once but twice. Both games were one-run losses, one in extra innings. Vanderbilt
one got out of hand as soon as the bullpen got super involved.
Yeah.
Which, again, I think when we start talking about the questions that we have for this year and what to watch for, that'll come back into play. But I think the thing
they took the national runner-up to the death twice, and this is still a team that was seen as, hey, what are they missing? So
yeah, it could have been a lot better. Is I think really the story when you talk about the program's recent history. But 2021 we kind of have to toss aside. 2019 they got walked off in the first winners bracket game versus Auburn. We were all there. It was very fun to watch. I remember there being a lot of debate whether Connor Thomas should have still been in for those last couple of outs, but I don't think that's something you can legislate 2 years as in the past, or 2 years in the future. But they still made it back to that regional final, but the bats just went cold and they lost to Auburn. Auburn ended up, I think, making it to the CWS that year. Oh, no. They got beat in their super regional by UNC. UNC made it to the CWS. I think that's what happened.
I think it's the inverse of that, but it doesn't really matter because they did beat us in a weird, heartbreaking, tragic fashion. So
yeah, it was very Atlanta sports. And then the years before that, Tech kind of was in the wilderness, to say.
Yes. Yeah.
They missed the tournament entirely, like 3 out of 4 years. We really pinned our hopes, I think, both of us on that 2019 team is sort of breaking that streak and breaking through, and it paid off technically. But at the same time, if you look at their history over the last 20 years, the last time that Tech advanced out of a regional was the last time that they made it to Omaha, to the College World Series, and that was 2006.
Yep.
And it's been 14, 15 years.
Yeah.
And at the clip that they're recruiting, especially more recently, things should be a lot more productive.
We can paint our hopes and dreams on when we talk about specific contributors, but it is worth noting that Georgia Tech has had a recent conference championship. That's 2014. That was Maryland's last competition in any ACC sport. So sent them out of the conference with an L. That was not underrated, but they weren't the 1 seed, we'll say, in 2014. So definitely
underdog.
More or less was not expected to win the crown that year. Georgia Tech does have the, I believe, either second or third most conference title.
Second, I'm pretty sure FSU has an absurd number.
Yeah, we've got 9, I think. It depends on how you count it. Regular season, conference, tournament. Potato. Yes, 2017-18 squandering talent, I think, was also kind of a theme there. Joey Bart went second overall. We can unbox that a little bit too. But the point is, Tech has never really. Well, we've been to the College World Series twice. We have this perception as being a baseball. Sorry, 3 times. Twice under Hall is what I meant to say. We have this perception of being a pretty baseball school. We're relatively consistent, but a lot like golf, we've never really broken through. We've always recruited pretty well, but have never really hit the big jackpot. So, sir, I think the important question to ask is, can we do it next year?
I love having our most pertinent question be next year, question mark?
My guy, I'm a born and raised Cubs fan. That's what I was born to ask.
Sounds like you're a Georgia fan. Anyway, I had to get the quip in there. Let's talk about who could really put that next year run together. English is hard. On the shot sheet here, we have a couple, actually like a very long list of players that are, I would say, I mean, it's not an old team. It's definitely like that mid class, not a lot of lower classmen, not a lot of upperclassmen, but that definitely, like, you have a lot of sophomores and juniors by eligibility on this team. So they have 2 years to cycle through plus the COVID year, right? If you're counting that. So you're talking about Kevin Parada, Tres Gonzalez, Parada at the catcher spot, and he was part of the USA Baseball College national team this year. He was that good. He was also amazing at the plate. I think he was on the all freshman team as the catcher as well.
Yes. I will say, all these guys technically get that COVID year. Parada, that means we could see 4 more years of him. That's not going to happen.
No, he's gone. Right,
we're getting 2 more years of him at best.
Yeah, we're like, Kevin Parada is gone. As soon as that draft year comes around, he is off to hopefully Cobb County and the local baseball team.
I'm knocking on some wood here, but he's a stud. Georgia Tech, great with catchers. Need to find another one. We're at the point
we had another one. Henry Ford is a catcher, right?
Yeah.
Had another one, and then who signed him?
I can't remember, but he went over slot, I think, too. So.
I think it was the Pirates.
Dang. But no, yeah. Georgia Tech, great history recently of catchers. Kevin Parada just needs to keep doing what he's doing. And honestly, another year or 2, maybe 3, if something weird happens and he decides, hey, that Tech degree
is back.
What I need. That is a position that's locked down. Good.
I feel safe. I feel safe at catcher and also with his bat in the lineup.
Yeah, for sure. Doubles.
Gonzalez was really good in the outfield. I know he had a couple flubs here and there, but that's just statistics. That's just
a lot too.
Yeah.
He's good eye for pitches. Can't complain about that.
Mm-hmm. Marquise Grissom, after some injury concerns the first half of the year, came on pretty strong near the end. He had a couple pretty good postseason starts too.
Yeah, for a kid who was basically thrown into the fire coming off an injury, a kid who came in with a decent amount of hype. I mean, that comes with the name. When you are your father's namesake and your father
Playing in Atlanta,
like that just kind of happens. Again, definitely. This is a pitching staff last year that saw a lot of turnover from the previous season or two, and they frankly kind of, I guess, need that leader, especially with Archer is going to Hawaii, right?
Yeah, so, Archer transferred to Hawaii. Who else on that staff is left?
Is Herder coming back? Herder's been around for a long time.
Herder may have.
I think he got drafted. Yeah, we're so good at this podcast thing.
Preparation is our strong suit. But it's still a bit of turnover. I think any way you slice it, the starting positions are still up for grabs.
Yeah.
Even if Herder was here and he was healthy and he was here, I think you're still looking at all three rotational positions up for grabs.
Well, our notes in the sheet here say Court Rodig back from the dead. Like he was a pretty meaningful contributor, a midweek starter on the 2019 team, and he's still got eligibility left too. Like it's a middling-ish, youngish team, but like there's still these names that have been around a long time. The team's in a weird place in that there's a lot of known quantities, but it's like the ceiling is still there. I feel like but correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No. I think I get what you're saying. I think with Court is that I don't know if we've seen. There's the whole. I can't remember the exact Dennis Green quote that everyone memes from a Cardinals press conference. Oh, it's they are who we thought they were. I don't know if that's the deal with Court, because I think the control we mentioned in 2019, he had some control issues. You would see that flare up, and I think it especially flared up in the ACC tournament game versus UNC, where he would just complete. I don't know. It's not the yips, but it's just like he could not hit the strike zone for a couple batters. It happened again in long stretches in 2021, and that's why you saw him, relegated back to more of a bullpen role. If he can get that control back with a normal offseason, I think he's still in the mix here. It's just that those control issues. It's not just him with the control issues.
I was going to say, I'm going to be frank here. That is up and down the roster. I mean,
they have a lot of good speed. Like, let's be clear. The power is there from the mound. The spin rate, some of the analytics-y stuff that you talk about when it comes to pitching is there. It's the control. There's something with the control that has just it's befuddling for someone that has not played the sport at a high level, especially. It is befuddling.
Yeah, I was editing our notes a little bit because we kind of are taking detours all around the returning contributors page. But in terms of other stuff on the mound, Luke Bartnicki's been, would you say, our go-to reliever, if not one?
If you're looking at for shutdown closers,
yeah,
it's not completely slammed the door shut for him. I think he's had a couple up and down outings here and there, but late on in that season, I think when we were discussing these games live, you were like, okay, out of the bullpen, out of how many guys are in there, Bartnicki, please save us kind of deal. Like, I don't want to brag too much on the bullpen. Like I'm sure they're all great guys, but some of the
out there, man.
Some of the performances were a little inconsistent, but Bartnicki was someone, especially late on, especially as you got into the postseason, he was consistent. He was slamming the door shut.
I'm about to do something dangerous.
Oh God.
I'm going to project what I want to happen onto two players, which is incredibly dangerous. but we're going to humor me here for a second.
Okay.
Zach Maxwell plus control. Bartnicki, consistency. That's a pretty good 8th, 9th inning pair. Obviously, you can't throw that every game. But if the two of them can both be consistent and have control, I think Maxwell would, in particular, would be one of the hardest kids to hit.
I'm telling you, like, it's not just for meme reasons, but I really want Maxwell to figure out this control thing. Because the dude can spin it. Like, he's tossing some flame out on the mound, but he just cannot, like, he just could not find the strike zone in the postseason. I'm trying to be like more positive more constructive with the criticism. I hope that his time in Chatham, whatever, the summer league team has helped. Like, and I've heard he's had some good outings. So, like, I'm looking for that progress in 2022.
Yeah, we need some field correspondence out in Cape Cod, but
we have one technically, but
what was I going to say? No, I think one thing we can also agree on there is some of the things the announcers say about this guy weird me out. Like, is that a fair thing? I've been sitting on that all year. Like, they just toss out a new nickname, and I'm just kind of like, why?
It's not okay. So to be clear, it's like ACC network announcers. It's not the hometown radio. It's not like any of the home guys doing the broadcast. It's not Demetra or Wiley. It is like the ACC network baseball duo that keeps coming up with newer and stranger names.
Like, I swear there's just like a brainstorming session. It's like, all right, what are we going to call these guys? They need baseball player nicknames. You know, like, they're going to get something for Parada, but the one that just, they're like, all right, they got to pivot away from Zach Maxwell and be like, all right, we got to get one for Bartnicki. We got to find one for
hunk of sugar. The big hunk of sugar, Jake.
They called him a donkey too.
Yeah, that one was a little more questionable.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I've got a voice for podcasts, not a voice for radio. I'll put it like that.
God, you set up a joke so well right there, and I'm going to ignore it for now.
I think we shouldn't ignore the hitting, and I say hitting in particular because Jenkins, Compton, and Reed stick out. That would be Andrew Jenkins, Drew Compton, and Stephen Reed stick out in my mind, mostly for their prowess at the plate. Wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm. I mean, was it Compton that had multiple game-saving home runs
Yes.
in the postseason? I don't think we could ignore that. The dude was on fire during the regional, and he kept Tech in that second Vanderbilt game twice. He hit a game-tying home run in the ninth, in the bottom of the ninth, and then again, I think somewhere in the 11th. That game went 14 innings.
Yeah. I mean, he also had a car too, I think. So, you know.
Oh, I remember that. I think that was one of the first regional games, though.
That was out to right field. People,
don't park your car there.
Don't drive past the Rusty Seat during a baseball game. Don't park your car right outside of a baseball stadium during the game. Obviously, the regional game was not at Russ Chandler, but honestly, their street layout pretty similar to Georgia Tech with the right field line situation.
Except, having a parking lot right out in right field.
Well, their third base concourse is literally the football stadium. So we could go in the rabbit hole on that architecture if we wanted to too, but I think that's probably a story for another time. Let's see. I think in terms of returning contributors, obviously corners, outfield, catcher, pretty decent options. We can talk breakout potential and incoming folks for the middle infielders, but I don't think you can say, all right, Marquise Grissom, Luke Bartnicki, and Zach Maxwell, all right, we're going to give you some freshmen and let's ride. Like, there needs to be some improvement from, the extraneous other pieces in our bullpen and our potential starting rotation Dalton Smith, Hugh Chapman, Chance Huff, which all had their moments, right? So it's really a matter of who can do, and obviously with COVID, it's a little bit tougher to project the rosters in the extra year and whatnot. So
the extra year, we've talked about this with other sports. The extra year is roster management hell for some of these coaches.
Oh yeah,
especially with what, like you only have 8.3 scholarships to pass around for baseball.
11.7.
Okay, well, one of the sports is 8.3.
The what was I going to say? But yeah, no, and you can extend it to any other sport. Like Josh Pastner waiting on that phone until the last possible second for Jose Alvarado to decide if he's taking his extra year or not. And we can talk that when we get to basketball. But I'm sure that's not a fun position for a coach to be, waiting, expecting, trying to pencil in lineups, how to use your scholarships, all that.
The spreadsheets just got so much harder, and the consultants have to work so much harder.
Hey, if we're gonna rip off enough of SCD, I'll crib Matt Brown here and say billable hours are undefeated. So
billable hours are always undefeated. Let's talk more breakout potential. I think we mentioned Henry Ford in this space. I think he would have been a good fit for the DH spot. Alas, someone has signed him away.
Oh no, I just had a horrible thought. Henry Ford would be the perfect Georgia Tech athlete.
I now know where you're going with this. Finish the statement.
Oh, man.
Finish the statement.
You could put him in the rec, and that would sell like every program, or like
I'm gonna make
video, like put him in the back on the rumble seat, like, yes, this is me. And then
I'm going to make sure that I have his name correct, because otherwise I think I'm going to be disappointed. Yeah, Henry.
Well, we're so dumb. It's Harry. Oh my goodness.
Okay, wait. This guy is committed to UVA. I'm looking for class of 2021.
Dude, it's Harry Ford.
Harry. Okay, his name is Harry, not Henry.
That's
what I thought.
I was gonna say, how did I never realize that? I look at the sheet, I'm like, that's too perfect.
Okay, well, it's Harry Ford. I apologize for having that written down wrong. He would be in the spot. He probably would be a good DH. Alas, he got drafted by Seattle? Okay.
Yeah, first round.
Not bad. I mean, he was like a top 5 pick, so pretty good for him. I mean, he's going to be making like $3.8 million of signing bonus. So
the only question left is, are you going to cut out that horrible gaffe of me talking about the rec and us thinking?
No, we're leaving it in. No, we're moving right on. Tech did get a couple transfers. I think one of them was an outfielder. Again, we podcast so well. One of them was an outfielder. One of them was middle infield. One of them was exceptionally fast on the base paths too. I think he had 40 steals.
A couple were middle infielders. So we went from question mark in terms of returning talent there to, okay, now we got 2-3 options, and hey, maybe we'll pull a Louisville and start lighting up the base paths. So I kind of like that. It's a bit of a dice roll. I'm kind of a risk-averse guy, but if Tech can step it up on the base paths, I think that would maybe make us a little bit more dangerous, especially with the ability of one Mr. Parada to hit lots and lots and lots of doubles. So having people in scoring position is very helpful.
Yeah, and I think moving right down the line here, Jaden Jackson was a really good second base option, second base and shortstop. I think he did get injured in one of the regional games. He was either the regional or he got injured in a postseason game. I don't remember which part of the postseason, and had to come out. I think it was a concussion, but he was pretty good in the stretches that he had. Gronkowski was also a stand-in for Colin Hall for most of the year. We haven't talked about Colin Hall all that much, but he was injured for a good chunk of the year, I think.
Why did he come back? That's my biggest question, I think, on the year, because he just ate at bats and innings when he was back. Right?
I don't know. I'm not gonna rag on someone for making personal decisions. I think there's a value to having veteran leadership. Obviously, like
no, I meant in the lineup during the season. Like if he was injured, just throwing him into the postseason just seems mean. All right, go bat against Vandy.
It's a choice. It's a choice someone can make.
It's a choice someone did make, but
yeah. But Gronkowski was pretty good in the at bats that he got. I mean, he was like,
the
glove and the bat were serviceable. I mean, serviceable might be undercutting it. I think his glove was pretty good. Bat was good, productive.
Yeah,
we're gonna get to see a lot more of him this season. And then we already talked about the recruiting class, the recruiting churn. It's still, the engine is still revving. The engine's still moving. I don't really have problems with the pipeline there. It's just in moving sort of into what we're looking for this season. It's, can they translate that talent, especially that arm talent that they're getting into wins, consistent bullpen performances, and then regional performances.
I mean, you look at this this recruiting class. Obviously, stinks not to have Harry Ford, but it's a shortstop, Christian Campbell, and then pitcher, outfielder, pitcher, shortstop, outfielder, pitcher. Like that, there's clearly an identified need there, right? And hopefully the cream rises to the top.
And it's the same thing that softball did. We talked about this last week. Softball realized that they had a need at pitcher, and they brought in 3 of them. And obviously, we'll have to see if that pays off, but at least identifying an obvious need, we have to. Okay, identifying an obvious need sounds mean, but we have to give them credit for filling spaces, right?
Yep. And I think that's the kind of what you see a little bit at the MLB level too. In some schools of thought of like, hey, like you never really know how an arm's going to develop. Take a couple shots at it, get some good depth, get some good prospects, and just see what happens.
Mm-hmm. Quickly, because both of us are missing Olympic swimming now, we should run through the conference. You wanted to talk a little bit about how underrated the conference was by the national seeding this past.
Oh, it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. I'm not going to pull any punches on that. We can talk all we want and be opinionated about how Tech could have been better at this, yada, yada, better at that. But the fact of the matter is the ACC took a necessary step in a pandemic and guaranteed some schedules by playing 12 conference series. What that also did was tank everybody's RPI, because everybody's taken, if you're playing 6 more conference games, then that's, the conference is going to go 500 in those games instead of, you're playing Western Carolina and you're sweeping them 27-5, that hurts Tech and it hurts the rest of the ACC.
Also, the primary problem, you mentioned RPI, but the only reason this ended up being a problem is because for once the committee used RPI as the deciding metric in a year where you knew that RPI wasn't going to mean anything because there was no cross-conference play
or very
cross-conference play.
And the fact that, hey, we're going to release these 20 potential host sites rather than, like how would that have meaningfully changed COVID exposure by just waiting until the top 16 teams were decided? Because you lock in Notre Dame and Pittsburgh as the only 2 schools that could possibly host, and this is immediately before Pittsburgh and podcasting straight into the ground implosion. Tech won the Coastal because it had a pretty good end to the year, but also because Pittsburgh had a pretty bad end to the year. So yes, the conference was underrated. This is the first year the Coastal winner was not a national seed in probably 15 years. Danny Hall was quoted on it. I cannot remember off the top of my head what it was.
There are a lot of people both on the team and in local media that were agitated about I'm of 2 minds on it, because if you watch the 2021 Georgia Tech baseball team cover to cover, like both of us did, I do not think in a vacuum they were deserving of a regional seat.
Nope.
At the same time, historic trends dictate that you do this, you're probably good enough to earn a national seat. It's a tough calculus.
Well, and if you look at how the season came down, the Coastal was very much a victim, and the ACC in general was very much a victim of basically most teams besides Wake Forest and Boston College, not to pick on anyone, beating each other up, right? Tech swept North Carolina State early in the season. That's the same North Carolina State team that, top 4 in the country, rehashing that whole COVID debate, blah, 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 whatever. Virginia, a team that was not really in the picture for the Coastal race late in the season, wins a regional that is hosted in Columbia, wins a super regional hosted in Columbia, and plays their way again into Omaha. This is, Miami. Miami underperformed. Louisville was a top 10 team, kind of sputtered down the stretch, didn't make the tournament. But these are good teams, right? This is a Duke team that came out of the cellar of the ACC to win the conference. Granted, some of that's who's hot, who's not. But this is an ACC that top to bottom, I believe, was rather underrated. And maybe that top 16 team shouldn't be Georgia Tech, but it should have been someone. And that's a shame. Notre Dame, as 10 seed, probably should have been top 8, probably should have hosted the super regional. But I guess that's life, can't relitigate a season that already happened, right? Except maybe
unless if you're NC State.
Yeah. That's a different can of worms.
That is a different can of, it's not even worms at that point. It's like a can of scorpions.
Yeah. And at the same time, if Tech hosts, then the Coastal winner doesn't have to go on the road to Vandy and take the second best team.
The Coastal winner doesn't have to have the worst possible draw in the tournament and go to Nashville to play nationally ranked. It's so dumb. It's so dumb.
And they still took them to death twice. I've said that plenty of times already today, and I'll continue to beat that horse. We've touched on this, but I think this pivots into the conference outlook for next year. Notre Dame, possibly good again? Question mark. We have. I like what they're doing there. I thought they were fun to watch this year, and they looked pretty convincing against us, and I thought we were not bad either. North Carolina State and Virginia went to the College World Series. Obviously, there's some losses there. There's some question marks, but 2 out of 8 ain't bad. Louisville lost a great catcher. That it's always tough to see a player go first overall. That's how you know you lost a good talent. But they've been consistently excellent the entire time they've been in the ACC, and their addition to our baseball strength has been, I think, probably rather underrated when we talk about how the last phase of conference realignment affected the ACC, especially considering Syracuse literally was nothing but Notre Dame, Louisville, recent additions, Pittsburgh for a while there this year, not so bad.
Pittsburgh was really rattling some cages early.
Oh yeah. Other things, Miami, seriously underwhelmed. I think they'll probably be back next year. I think they probably could have done a lot more this year. FSU, I mean, they're pretty much always good. Duke won the conference. UNC, they'll reload. They were kind of on the wire. Like we've said, the ACC was good and weird this year. And the more I talk about this, the more I'm nervous for next year. But a rising tide lifts all ships, right? The ACC being a top to bottom good baseball conference. We haven't even said the name Clemson yet today, right? And that's a historically good ACC baseball program too.
I think my life is a lot less stressful without mentioning the name Clemson, personally.
I would agree. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything else on the future of the ACC, but I think the conference top to bottom will be pretty darn good next year.
No, I don't really have anything else to say. I think it's just hard to project because we're sitting here in July, barely 2 months after the season has ended. We're not really all that far clear of the draft. We're not really that far clear of like the transfer portal cleaning itself out. It's hard to really say anything until October. Anything more concrete, at least until October scrimmages. And then even more concrete than that until January or February. It's just, that's the way the sport works. And we run the shop. So It's not like we're gonna not do what we want with our preview shows.
I guess, yeah, yeah, that's fair.
I mean, it was more of a review show, but at the same time, I think we all had fun with that.
I mean, for those who are just tuning in and this is your first episode, we do these previews in reverse orders. So that way they're freshest for the fall sports. So if you're looking back in the archives for, hey, football, volleyball, those are coming up. But this is a long episode tonight because we have quite the white elephant in the room to talk about, right?
Also, you mixed two idioms. White elephant. Oh my God. All right. There is a strong possibility I cut this episode in half.
Hello, this is Akshay checking in from the editing room. I did end up cutting this episode in half, so if you're interested in the second part of this discussion, which is on ACC and conference realignment, go check out the next episode in your podcatcher. Other than that, y'all have a great week, and we will see you next time.